Just did a project recently that I thought would be interesting to share with all of you because it was the second time I've been fully in charge of lighting and setting up the camera for a narrative piece. It was also a great challenge to have to show up and figure out everything on the day, the first time I'd ever been in this space. Let's get into it. So how this happened was, I'm part of a few different Facebook groups in Montreal relating to acting, relating to indie filmmaking, filmmaking in general, where you can always find different people looking for different positions on a film set. In this case, a guy had written a script, he wanted to film something to add to his acting reel, and he was looking for other actors. I wrote him and I said, hey, I would love to be DOP for your short script if you're interested, if you're looking for a cameraman. And he said that'd be great. So we got on a Zoom call and then we were off to the races. So this is a great tip that I think you can do if you're looking for a way to practice being a DP, is find actors that are looking to build their reel and see if you can elevate their craft. So after we did our Zoom call, this guy, Derek, he sent me the 2 scripts he'd written, about 4 pages each, and he showed me an Airbnb that he'd rented, which I guess I wish we had consulted on first, since it was kind of low ceilings, small rooms with just blank white walls everywhere, which I thought might be difficult to make look interesting. But on the plus side, it had 2 living rooms, and he went to the trouble of renting this space, so I thought that was really cool. So looking at the Airbnb photos, I sketched out a rough plan for what I wanted to do on the day, and knew that when I got there, I'd have to adapt it. So the plot of this first one is an angry friend walks in the room, wakes up his friend that's sleeping, and basically tells him, "Did you sleep with my girlfriend?" And the sleeping guy is like, "Yeah, but I have some other bad news to tell you too." And that was the plot of this piece. They wanted to, push their acting chops. So I figured I would want to cover this on a wide and then move in for sort of over the shoulders or singles. The look I wanted was sort of a grungy, hungover basement vibe, that feeling when you've slept in too late, so I knew I wanted some haze, some light spilling through the curtains, maybe some shears to reduce the light if it was too bright. So the first shot I set up was the wide shot so that I would know where to motivate all the lighting from when I got into those over the shoulders and singles. I put one light outside, basically acting like the sun, like sun coming in through the windows, but conveniently pointed at my talent who was on the couch. And then because this room was pretty boring, I also put a practical in the corner. And fun fact about this Airbnb is they bought 9 of the exact same light. So I didn't have a lot of options to work with when it came to practicals. And to make matters worse, I have little Aputure MC lights that I usually put inside lights so that I can control the brightness, but these were too small for me to do that with, so the lights are a little bit blown out compared to what I would have liked. I had some haze to the room, we put some beer bottles and old pizza around, and that was the setup for our wide. I also did one other wide looking the other way so that we could see the entrance of his angry friend coming down the stairs, and also so that we could see the little practical light in the ceiling that I later used to motivate this hair light that we'll see in a second in Derek's single. So as you'll see here in this single, his main light source is coming from that light that's outside, and then he's got a bit of a hair light, sort of an orange hair light that's motivated from that ceiling light that we saw in my second wide pointed back at the stairs. For Max's single, while he was standing, the angry guy, I basically kept the same key light that's kind of hitting the back of his hair there, but I added another light coming in opposite to give him sort of a short side key light so that we'd have a shadow side on the camera, but he still got a nice amount of level on that side of his face. So lessons learned from this first one. One thing I found difficult was it was so bright outside from the snow, from the daylight, and dark in this room, but still white walls bouncing light everywhere. It was hard to balance giving a dark, moody interior with that bright exterior. And I think maybe a brighter light source would have helped me push a little more light into the room so I could just bring all the levels down. I did try to shoot it brighter, knowing I would bring it back down. I would flip the aperture open and close to see what a darker look would look like. But I think I got a little bit stuck not being able to shoot it as bright as I would have wanted to bring down later because I would end up blowing stuff out. So if anyone has any good tricks for this, please leave them in the comments. I would love to know how you deal with situations like this. Short number 2, where there's smoke, there's fire. Okay, so here we have 2 friends playing cards. They're doing tarot cards. A third friend busts in. He's just been beaten up by a gang and he's not happy.
I don't know, the fucking gun they shoved in my mouth.
This was interesting because it was 3 people sitting around a table, and I guess we'll get into lessons learned after I talk about the setup and what I did. So the basic setup I decided on was one top light directly over the table, kind of like an overhead ceiling light you might find, with the grid straight down, focusing the light so it wasn't bouncing all over the space, and then just a few practicals all over the room, and maybe one Aputure MC behind the couch to try to give that woman a little bit of a hair light when she was sitting on the couch. I tried putting my 100D light outside, hoping it would look like moonlight, but maybe because I couldn't control the color temperature of the light, it just ended up looking like a light and not the sort of cool blue that we're used to seeing in movies as moonlight. I decided to turn it off. I also tried adding some negative fill just to give ourselves a better shadow side, but I was out of grip tools at that point. I didn't have any more stands, so I just taped it to the couch, and honestly, I'm not sure how much it actually did. For the close-ups, I basically kept the same thing, the ceiling light, that hair light for the woman, and maybe at one point we tried a special shot with me following the scared actor in, just to give a different option for them for the edit, but I didn't change too much for the close-ups. So I guess the rule with 3 people is shoot inside the triangle or shoot outside the triangle, but don't switch back and forth. You need to make sure you cover all 3 people, either from the inside or from the outside, but not changing, as it gives you consistent eye lines and helps orient the audience when you get to the edit. Inside or outside, but not both. I also tried to add haze to this scene, but because my top light was just off camera, it ended up giving this big blue cloud that showed where the light was. So I ended up having to cut the haze, which I think is too bad. Haze is great because it can add volume to your space and it can accentuate natural light beams, which looks really amazing, but you have to be careful if your source is really close to the edge of your frame because it can reveal where those lights are and make it no longer look like naturally motivated lights. You want to emphasize light beams that feel natural, not reveal things that don't. One more takeaway, because these guys were still learning their lines and practicing the scene on the day we were shooting, we didn't have a lot of time to think about blocking. I think if we'd had more time, I would like to try to get these guys moving around a little bit more in the space, really plan that out, as I think it would help the scene feel a little bit more dynamic, and then I wouldn't have to try to do it with camera action, as that ended up feeling more amateur and less dynamic than I was hoping for. Final thoughts. While I've done a lot of filming, sort of videography, doing corporate interview, B-roll type things, or dance films, when I've done PAing, production assistant, on bigger sets, I realized that no one is gonna say, geez, who's that PA? We should really get him to be our DOP for our next shoot. Like, that's never gonna happen. If you wanna get hired for those roles, you need to practice those roles and have a reel that you can send out to people and say, this is the job that I do. And so one way to build this, since you're not getting hired as a DOP without experience, is to go find ways to get experience. And this is a great way to do it. There's no financial pressure from a client. You're there to learn, just like the actors are there to practice their acting. You're there to practice your DOPing. So for me, this was a great experience. I felt like I learned a lot. I had a good day setting up the lights, working in a new space, working under time pressure, working with people all at the same time. And it's something that I would definitely recommend if you're looking to get into this. So I hope you learned something. If you have any comments of ways that you have learned, or if you have recommendations for what I could have done better on this shoot, I'd love to hear them in the comments section. Thanks a lot. See you out there.